Hello.
Hi. There's less of a vibe to starting a remote podcast than there is when we're both in the same room, isn't there?
There's just an ever so slight delay.
There's just a moment of us both kind of looking at each other going, hi. Oh, God.
I blame the internet.
Yeah. Mate, it was... this is going to be a very different podcast to the one that we thought we were going to be recording a week ago, isn't it?
Just a little bit, yeah. Different cars, different track.
Yeah.
make up the majority of this one, so yeah.
I'm very aware that in the previous episode we went to go and do predictions of Imola, and then we kind of backed away from it a little bit, and I basically just said, oh, I just hope there's a bit of rain and it's a bit of an exciting Grand Prix. So I'm sorry, everyone.
Alex did a rain dance, and then just didn't stop.
Wow. So basically, if you're unaware of what's happened, how are you unaware of what's happened if you're watching this? But the Imola Grand Prix didn't happen. The area was under severe sort of weather conditions for most of the week, and I think it was Wednesday the FIA released a statement saying that they'd cancelled the Grand Prix, didn't they?
They did. It was the Wednesday before the race weekend, which, let's be honest, is a rare win for the FIA, because I was expecting them to do it on Sunday as the cars lined up. So yeah, that was good, and it also got announced, didn't it, that the fans would get a full refund of their ticket.
It did, yeah.
Or they could transfer it to next year's race, which is also like the right. It's a good thing, isn't it?
It is, and it's good that they announced it that quick as well. I know that there were loads of issues with Spa a couple of years ago and stuff, and I don't even know if that got resolved still. So it's good that like both the circuit, the organizer, and the FIA or Formula One themselves have come out and said that quickly, because there's going to be a lot of people who've spent a lot of money, to go and watch that Grand Prix, and then all of a sudden it ain't happening.
A lot of money. Obviously, it's no one's fault why it was cancelled. It was ultimately the correct decision. So essentially, as you've just said, it was heavy rainfall in the area. There was flooding. Was there risk of mudslides or landslides being knocked about as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, so obviously it was the right decision. Essentially, the authorities in and around the region said we couldn't man a successful and safe Grand Prix without taking, much needed personnel from where it's needed most, which was to support the people who were most affected. So, of course, it was the right decision. However, Ferrari didn't think so.
Did they not?
So, no, so they barely thought it warranted inters. And to prove it, right, they actually sent I've got a footage of this, I'll insert it here. They sent Charles out on slicks, and he's still in the barriers of turn one.
Oh, God. Well, it's not unlike Ferrari to just completely misread a situation, is it?
No.
They were they were just like, there's wetness coming from the sky, but, we race. Now, joking aside, actually, Ferrari have donated a load of money towards the rescue efforts, haven't they? As have Formula One themselves.
Yeah.
And quite, I think a few of the drivers have been involved in sort of fundraising as well. I guess all of us Formula One fans and racing fans wanted a race, and although we didn't get one, we can all kind of step back and go, yeah, it's the right decision. There's a people have lost their lives in that area, and there's essentially a rescue effort going on, an assistance effort going on with all the emergency services and stuff. So it was the right decision for Formula One to cancel as soon as they could, not have 100,000 people turning up to Imola and then just getting stuck there.
Absolutely. There was a couple of good moments that came out of it, though, wasn't there? I'm sure you've all seen, and I know you've seen, the legend that is Yuki Tsunoda. He was there shoveling water away from houses and the streets, and like what a thing to do. Like we in Formula One, I guess we've been spoiled because Seb was usually that guy, wasn't he?
Yeah.
If there was cleanup to be done, Seb was there. So Yuki has maybe sort of took over the reins from him, and Seb will be very proud. But yeah, it's a testament to him, really, because I know he's only a young driver, but it shows like a real maturity and like he's a good, decent human being, which is in like these situations, then people like shine and come to the top and prove their worth, don't they? And I'm sure there was thousands of people doing what he was doing who aren't going to get the recognition that they rightly deserve. But it's just nice to see one person who didn't have to do that. He didn't have to. He could have just went back to his hotel or whatever the hell he was staying and put a tweet out and said, "Oh, this is really bad. My thoughts are with everyone." But he rolled up his sleeves, got his hands dirty, and actually physically helped, which is awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool to see, and I think he if I'm right, actually he lives in that area now. Because I know that the Alpha Tauri factory is it Faenza? I think. I'm not exactly sure. I've probably butchered the pronunciation of that, but I know that he moved to be close to the factory, I think last year or the year before. So I think it's actually where he lives at the moment, which is wild. But yeah, full props to him for just getting stuck in on the ground and just helping out. I think there were members of the Alpha Tauri crew getting stuck in as well. And it's nice to see. He's a good lad, isn't he? He's a good egg. I think
he is.
This season and in general has really sort of warmed me to Yuki. I'm a big fan right now.
It seems like he's done a lot of like maturing in a very short space of time, hasn't he? Because he's obviously been maybe a bit guilty, being a bit immature and saying silly things or doing silly things, but it's easy to forget he is only a young guy. But yeah, this season he does seem to have particularly like sort of grown up into that leader in the team, which is it's really nice to see.
Yeah, it's good. It's good, and as we say, they've done a good thing there. We'll chuck the donation thing for the disaster relief that Alpha Tauri have been sharing up now. If anyone wants to sort of to donate to it. And so obviously, best. Our thoughts are with everyone in the area who are affected. There is back on the sort of the racing side of it. There are actually some big implications of Imola actually being cancelled, in that a lot of teams were forecast to bring updates to Imola.
Yes,
and they were gonna. Although I don't exactly know how it was going to work, because as far as I'm aware, Imola was going to be a sprint weekend, so I don't think there's a lot of testing opportunities available there, but it is quite a standard racetrack. It's quite a big racetrack. There's runoff areas if things are to go wrong or whatever, and obviously those teams now can't use those upgrades, and the first chance they're going to have to run those upgrades now is in Monaco, which is a very different track. The barriers are very
it's not
close.
Ideal, is it?
No, so I wonder if that's going to have some big implications a little further down the line. Obviously Mercedes were due to bring a massive upgrade, but I believe Ferrari had a big one as well.
So I'm not 100% sure how this kind of stuff works. So for instance, if the teams wanted to, could they hold off on those upgrades for this weekend, or do they have to bring an upgrade to the car?
Yeah, I don't think they have to, but I guess it just depends on whether they've already done the work and sort of fitted everything to the car and changed it already, because I guess there's certain upgrades that you'd build and add on that would then take time to remove. Maybe you don't want to do that. I guess it's up to them, and they've had an extra week to tweak things if need be.
But yeah. I mean, obviously there's time in the simulators and things that they can do, but it's a big risk, isn't it? Essentially, there could be massive upgrades on the car to a track where you kind of just need you and the car need to be just one.
Yeah.
There can be no surprises. What's the car going to do? How's it going to react? How's it going to handle? You kind of just need a safe. Let's just get round the track.
Yeah.
So it for some teams it could be like a massive gamble.
It could be. I feel like Monaco is the worst track to have to do upgrade testing at because of that. because like you lock up, you're basically just in a wall immediately. Yeah. So I wonder what, obviously later on this week, we're recording this on Tuesday, so a few days time we'll see kind of what the teams have done. Maybe some of them will hold back on stuff. But yeah, I wouldn't fancy being those drivers in FP1 or FP2 if they are running updates on the cars.
The on the flip side, the saving grace of is the worst part of it is it's Monaco, but the best part of it is it's Monaco, because all they need is for the car to work around one lap.
That's true.
Really fast, and then they can just sort of hold position then for the race.
Just trundle.
So just go all out on the one lap, hope and pray that the upgrades are fine, and you're safe. You're
just
good.
Park the bus. Just sit
Get
in the middle of the track.
out.
Yeah, doing Alonso. That's it. It's gonna be fun. But yeah, we've got a little bit more time before we see F1 back. I guess the cancellation of Imola did lead us to watch some other racing, though, didn't it?
Yeah,
obviously
it did.
We've touched on in the past that we are both lifelong Raffaele Marciello fans. Always loved him since we saw him a couple of months ago.
I'm actually going to get a tattoo.
But like, he was racing, as were many other people, in the Nurburgring 24-hour, and as the Imola Grand Prix was cancelled and that was running on the same weekend, we both tuned in at different points, didn't we? I tuned in at the start of the race, caught a good few hours and had it on for most of the day while I was doing stuff in the house, and then tuned in on the Sunday for the sort of second half and just watched the finish and stuff, and just kind of caught up with stuff in the morning about what had been happening through the night. But basically you had, let me see if I can get this right, 130 odd cars running round a 20-kilometre circuit for 24 hours. Like, that was my first exposure to endurance racing, and it was wild. For the first sort of stint, I could follow what was going on a little bit, especially because I was following the driver names, and I was like, I know Marciello's in that car, so I'm going to follow that one. And then he came into the pits and another driver got in, and I was completely lost, and then I completely lost who was where and what was happening. Endurance racing is insane. I was so confused for the whole thing, but what an event to watch. Honestly, the Nurburgring itself as a circuit, most challenging circuit in the world. Like, the balls on those drivers to go and drive that track day and night, whatever weather, flat out for 24 hours is just mind blowing.
So I was working the Saturday, so I didn't see a lot of any of the action on Saturday really. But the bright side to having a baby is you're up very early.
Yeah.
So on the Sunday, I was up about 5 a.m. and I stuck it on. And I think it was, to be fair, I think it was going light. By then, the sun was starting to rise-ish, but it was showing like replays of when it was like pitch black. And yeah, man, like, I mean, obviously, most people have drove the Nurburgring in a sim.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's one thing, but then driving that track in the pitch black with just these tiny headlights, man, like, that looked terrifying. It looked terrifying.
Bonkers. It's absolutely bonkers. And the speed differences between the different classes of cars is mind-boggling, because obviously coming from an F1 background, you're just used to 20 cars, maybe 24, depending on when you started watching, going around the track. When you got 130 on track, or 130 odd on track, you've got cars grouped into different classes. You've got the GTs, which are all insanely quick, and then there's, I don't know exactly how many classes there are, but there's so many different sort of groupings, and some of the cars are like 4 minutes a lap slower than the GTs.
I'm not sure. we don't actually claim to be experts on this at all, but I think we did a TikTok on it.
Yeah.
And on the classes, and I think someone said there was about 8.
Yeah. We got a lot of people. We put a TikTok up, and a lot of people were sort of chiming in and helping us out, trying to watch it and make sense of it and understand it. And there were also a lot of Formula One fans tuning in for the first time, going, "Help! What's happening?"
Yeah.
But yeah, so the speed difference between the classes is bonkers. So what you've got, I mean, even during the day, it's mad. There was, I don't know if you saw it. It's I believe a fan favorite. There was a Dacia Logan, just a normal little saloon car, with a spoiler on. You know, they've kitted it out a bit, just chugging around.
A few go faster stripes.
Yeah, he was essentially doing 12-minute laps. The GTs were doing 8-minute laps. He got lapped on his first lap, I believe. But that is the point of this race, is that you've got those slower cars, you've got those faster cars, you've got the mad mix of just everything in between, and you've basically got GT cars driving like 100 mile an hour quicker, trying to navigate the toughest track in the world, where you've got this much like grass on the side of the road and then barriers. And they were all trying to navigate through these slower cars. The poor Dacia, obviously, you know, we were all cheering it on. Partway through the night, it got absolutely murdered by a Porsche 911, and I believe that's the end for that car. I believe it's written off completely. But like, if you watch the footage of the crash, the speed difference between the car that hit it and the Dacia is just mad. It absolutely blew my mind watching these GTs just thread their way through traffic on that circuit. Obviously, there were quite a few accidents. You know, the Dacia got wiped out. There were quite a few of the leading cars that kind of came a cropper because of traffic and stuff like that. But I believe that's kind of the nature of the event.
Did you see the tyre on fire?
Yes. Yeah. Just the brake exploded, didn't it? It was like, like, again, another thing that we talk about with Formula One is like, reliability and all that sort of stuff. But like to build a racing car that can drive flat out around the Nurburgring for 24 hours at like full tilt is bonkers. And obviously there's a lot of attrition sort of through the race. There's a lot of cars just having issues and dropping out and stuff, and, you know, exploding spectacularly, or, you know, drivers who've been doing like an hour and a half in the car making a mistake or whatever. But yeah, it was just, I don't know, it was an insane event to watch. Even though, like, as a Formula One fan, I was totally confused. I absolutely loved it. What did you make of it?
Yeah, I was the same. Like, because the first like exposure I've had to like multi-class racing was the GTs that we've been to. So you see like the Genettas and stuff, don't you? And you see like the super souped up big ones, and then the little tiny ones, and they're just zooming past. It's really exciting, and I'm not as a spectator thing, but obviously we drive like Sims and the games and stuff a lot. I'm actually starting to prefer driving those GT cars around those kind of tracks. I think it's just more fun.
Yeah.
But as for the race, yeah, it's really enjoyable. But I think it will take a lot of like care and attention to really get it.
Yeah.
Because as you say, there's this obviously not all GT racing's the same, but this 24-hour one in particular was, as you just said, over 120 cars, 7 or 8 different classes. So you've essentially got 7 or 8 different races going on in one big race, and then you've got all these drivers all dotted around this 20-odd kilometer track. So it's really, really confusing. I know there was some people, and like obviously they've been lifelong hardcore fans, cut them deep bleed this race. In the comments, they were like, "What's confusing? I don't understand it." It's like, dude, shut up! It is confusing.
We
like,
all lost.
It is. Like, we're not stupid, but there's like 10 races going on here at once, and it's the world's longest track. It's like, come on.
Do you know what blew my mind? And like, it's something super simple. And again, I think hardcore sort of GT racing fans, especially sort of enduro fans, are like, yeah, but no safety cars, no nothing. I love the way they handled it at the Nurburgring, and when you think about it, it totally makes sense why there wouldn't be a safety car when you've got 120 odd cars on track and the circuit's
take about 3 hours to line up behind it.
The circuit's 20 kilometers long. You'd have like about an hour behind the safety car, but they kind of just close down sections of the track if there's an incident. So they just kind of they I can't remember the section warning. Again, it's one of those things where I heard it about 50 times. And it slowly started to sink in that it was essentially like a double waved yellow, where the drivers have to slow down, properly slow down, while they send out kind of recovery vehicles onto the track. And these recovery vehicles stay over to one side, and they've got like cars behind them with sort of flashing lights, kind of like you'd see like an escort on the road or something, like just kind of warning the drivers. But then you've got like Unimog, like flatbeds driving with cars on the back of them, taking these cars back to the pits, presumably the nearest point that they can get off the track. And then you've just got GTs just absolutely bombing it past them. And it is the wildest thing I've ever seen. It's amazing. And I think if you were to go all health and safety on it, you'd get stuck in the mud. But as a spectacle, and as everyone kind of knows that that's what's going to happen, it's insane to watch. It's so cool. It's mad.
There was an incident. I'm sure there was a few of these incidents, but I only seen one. Where did you see the guy who had the puncture? And he still had about half the lap to go, so he had to limp this car around about 10 kilometers of track.
For about 4 hours, just chugging.
It's just like
it's slow,
because you know, because obviously that you've raced it in the Sims and stuff as well. If you make a mistake on that track, you've got about another 20 minutes before you start your next lap, so you've knackered the whole thing.
Yeah.
So I can only imagine having a puncture and limping it round 10 kilometres, what that's going to do to your race.
How frustrating it'd be. Oh no, it was wild. And then the guy who we were supporting, Marciello, they, I couldn't quite follow it, but they got a penalty through something in the pits, which knocked them back a little bit. But then I think also their car, and just in general, wasn't as quick. They still finished on the podium. They finished third, and there was a BMW team who I can't remember the life of me, who finished second. But there was a really nice story behind the team and the car who actually won the event. I don't know if you caught it at all. I've got some notes here, so make sure I don't. I'll mangle everyone's pronunciation.
Settle in, everyone.
But the winner was the number 30 Fricadelli Ferrari, which is so much fun to say. Like, just every time, Fricadelli Ferrari, great. It was the Ferrari 296, which apparently I think is the first outing for this car. So there were kind of like questions about, you know, how was it going to be reliable? It was quick, but was it going to be reliable? And it won the race. But it was driven by El Bamba, Nicky Katzberg, David Pittard, and Felipe Fernandez Lasser. So those four drivers took it in turns to sort of bring that car home to finish in first. It was the first non-German manufactured car to win this event in 21 years. Which is wild. I think everything's obviously been a mix of BMWs, Audis, and Mercedes. And I think it was it 2002 or 2001 or something, where the last car apparently was a Dodge Viper. So that's kind of a statement. It's the first Ferrari, and I don't know whether it's ever, but definitely in a long time. But the lovely story about it was that the owner of the team is the widower of Sabine Schmitz.
I did catch that.
Who we all, I think everyone in the UK definitely, and maybe sort of further afield as well, knows her from her appearances on Top Gear, where she was an absolute legend. She drove a Ford Transit van around the Nurburgring, and I think they put Jeremy Clarkson in a Jaguar, and she gave him tuition, and he managed to lap the Nurburgring in like 9 minutes 50 something. And then she went out in a Ford Transit van and lapped the Nurburgring 9 seconds slower. What an absolute beast. Unfortunately, she passed away from cancer in 2021. But her partner's racing team and her racing team that she'd been involved with for a long time won the Nurburgring 24. So yeah, there was a lovely little story involved in the sort of the winning of that race. But I tell you what, the the amount of storylines that unfolded over that event, and especially as sort of newcomers, we didn't catch all of them. We didn't catch any of them really, if you think about it. But we started getting attached to cars. You started seeing different things happening. That Foxtail Opel Manta, that lots of people commented and recommended us to support. It was cool watching that lapping round again. 30-odd-year-old car. That's just, well, I believe it's much older than that, but I think it's been racing for 30-odd years at that event. And this might have been that's last outing, but it went through without crashing, without incident. There's just, I don't know, yeah, there's loads of little stories that you can kind of pick up on with this. And I think as an experience of the event as a whole, it felt like something pretty special. I think because it runs over 24 hours as well, there's a lot more to get involved in. There's a lot to talk about. You take sort of breaks from the racing to kind of do other things and come back and see. Some people obviously must sit and watch the entire thing, and to those people, I salute you, and I have no idea how you managed to do that. But yeah, as an event, I guess it doesn't have the sort of the slick polish and the production and the big push behind it, the marketing push behind it that racing like Formula One has. But it's got a lot of heart. There's a lot of true motorsport fans involved in that, and I absolutely loved it. I'll be coming back for the next one.
That's what's really good about that type of racing, though, because it is, even the events we've been to, it's all about just the racing.
Yeah.
Whereas if coming from the Formula One background, it's not really in Formula One. Formula One's moving kind of more towards like showbiz and stuff. Obviously, the racing's still occasionally high quality.
well done. Well treaded there.
Most of the time. But there's a lot of fluff and a lot of spectacle to it. Whereas these, it's just warts and all.
It's just pure motorsport, isn't it?
Racing.
Yeah.
And I think that's why even for us who, as first timers coming to it, you don't really have to know anything about it to just watch it and enjoy it and appreciate what these teams are doing. Like there's teams just sleeping on the floor in the garages, just waiting to go again. And that's like, there's fans and sleeping bags sitting there. Like it's like, if that's not love of like a motorsport, it's infectious, isn't it? It's like you want to be involved in it because people love it so much.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll absolutely be back as well.
Yeah, definitely. And also I think the community that, we had a brief encounter with, because we posted a couple of things over the course of the race. For the most part, everyone was super welcoming as well. There was a lot of like friendliness and just kind of helping us out with like, how many classes of cars there are and what to watch out for and things like that.
Mostly.
Yeah, there was a few sort of not so friendly messages, but hey ho. But yeah, on the whole, I guess it's just like it's a very pure event run by motorsport fans for motorsport fans, and I'm all for that. So I think we'll definitely be tuning in again. I know that there's Le Mans in a few weeks' time, I believe. So I think it's definitely warmed me up to it a lot, and I'm going to try and get into that a bit more. And like you say as well, neither of us have done loads of it, but we've kind of enjoyed racing on the sim and things like that. And I'm very much like you, enjoying getting into the GT3 side of stuff, and sort of playing around in those cars. So,
do you think we should just enter it next year in your Ford?
I think so. Yeah. So I've got a little Ford Fiesta, and I think it'll be quicker than that Dacia. I mean, it'll be definitely quicker than that Dacia now.
Might not last as long. But...
I reckon I'd probably get to turn 2. I think that'd be my shot if I could get to turn 2.
That is about 73 miles, to be fair.
Do you know what? Like watching those lower teams, I was genuinely like, imagine if you could get into this. I actually genuinely Googled how to enter the Nurburgring 24, and it was like, you've got to take part in other courses and classes and other races and stuff. And I was like, well, fair enough. But do you know what's quite cool is, I guess, we'll stop with all the comparisons to F1, but I guess because we're so from that F1 background, that's the best thing we've got to compare it to, really. Watching Formula One, everyone has those little armchair moments of like, well, put me in that car and I'd have done better. But you know that there is less than zero chance that you would ever be in one of those cars participating in a Grand Prix. You just wouldn't. There's the 20 of the best drivers, well, 18 of the best drivers. I'll leave it to you who the two are. And you would never be anywhere near that. But things like the Nurburgring 24, watching that over the weekend, watching that little Dacia drag itself around the track, like with
it's hope for the little guy, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it makes it feel a bit more possible or a bit more accessible. It's a little bit like, oh, that's, that could be us. Like, obviously, those guys are super talented, but it's not like,
that's not like, yeah,
it's not like a multi-million-pound team that have been entered and it's all like a slick operation with like thousands of employees or all that. It's not. It's just people who love motorsport getting involved and actually racing up there with the big guys and on track, and unfortunately in the Dacia's case being wiped out by the big guys. I mean, I think something I read about that Dacia was that their sponsor pulled out just before the event, and I believe the marshals actually at the Nurburgring cobbled together and paid for their fuel.
Oh, wow.
Like, that's how sort of accessible it feels, and then it feels like everyone's just there for the love of it. And yeah, it feels like something that you could be part of, even just in the crowd. You feel closer to it. F1 feels a bit out of reach and a bit unattainable. But yeah, so... and
isn't that a shame?
It is. It is. I think it's naturally the way F1's gone over its journey. I think if you look back to like the 60s, definitely, like maybe the 70s as well, there were privateer teams where people were just building their own cars and entering. But naturally, as the sports kind of become more and more money oriented and more popular and whatever, it just kind of falls to bigger manufacturers and bigger teams. So it is a shame, but I think I've found a little home in that endurance racing world that I'm enjoying exploring. As I said, I've got no idea what's going on most of the time, but I don't know, it's quite fun. It's quite fun, and I'm looking forward to the next one. So yeah, I think we'll definitely be trying to catch that, won't we?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And just while we're on the subject of GT racing, I believe it's Spa.
Yes.
This weekend?
Is it this weekend?
Possibly.
Yeah, I think it was actually, because they were talking about a lot of the drivers at the Nurburgring literally finishing that race and then having to celebrate and fly straight to Spa. So
I think it might be this weekend. Yeah.
Might have to try and tune in for that. That's the only sort of downside for that, I guess, is that tuning into a 2-hour Grand Prix is a lot easier than tuning into a 24-hour race. So we'll see. But yeah, I'll have to try and catch that. But yeah, I guess we've started to embrace other forms of racing. We talked about this about 5 or 6 episodes ago. Who knew that we'd start sort of dabbling our toes in the water? Next. It is. Now it's the Indy 500 next weekend, isn't it?
Yes, that's what I say.
Yeah. So that was actually the other option. With the Imola Grand Prix sort of being cancelled, it was the Indy qualifying happening that weekend at the same time as the Nürburg 24, and I picked the Nurburgring, but yeah, it's the Indy 500 this weekend, isn't it? So I don't know whether I'll catch it. There's a lot of racing going on that weekend, but yeah, we'll have to try and get a bit more into IndyCar now. But I'll tell you what, dipping our toes in the water of GT racing, and I'm loving what I'm finding so far.
Absolutely, 100%.
But we are a Formula One podcast at heart, and I guess our main focus next weekend is gonna be the Monaco Grand Prix, innit?
Unfortunately, yeah.
I mean, I'm going to be watching it with like one eye on the Spa 24, but yeah, it's going to be the Monaco Grand Prix. And
oh, sorry, is it the Spa 24? I thought it was. Is it?
Or is this a Spa 6 hour or something? I don't know. There's a race.
Yeah, there's a race, and Raffaele Marciello is racing at it.
So we're watching.
So I will be there.
Yeah, going to start walking now. Yeah. So Monaco Grand Prix weekend next weekend. Lots of excitement around this one, especially with Imola sort of being cancelled because, as I said, teams are bringing updates and stuff like that. It wouldn't be sort of the podcast before the race if we didn't make some completely baseless predictions with no factual evidence about who is going to stand on the top step of the podium and probably who's going to be in the top 5. And we didn't want to disappoint you. We have made some predictions for Monaco.
Made them half an hour ago.
Oh yeah. What you mean you didn't sort of sit down and think about these like analytically and sort of draw from past results and look at the trends of how
I did, I picked the top 2, flipped a coin to see which one of them would come first, and then the rest of them I drew out of a hat.
Well, your top 5 is going to be fun. I just picked the ones I like.
Oh, I didn't do that.
Oh.
No, I'm just kidding. I like them all 18 of them.
if either of us get these right, well, I think the universe will end. I think that's the only conclusion to that. Let's jump into them. For first place at the Monaco Grand Prix, who did you pick?
Sergio Perez.
Is that because he's king of the street tracks?
Yeah.
Nice. Nice.
It's gonna be one of them, innit? Probably. And yeah, Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry. It's gonna be Fernando Alonso. But I mean, I'd love it to be. I would absolutely love it. Like, I would take the Red Bull taking the L on that one if it meant him winning this race. But I do live in the real world. Clip this, just in case. And I still can't see past the Red Bull win. And yeah, Perez just edged it just because he's got that reputation of being so good around the streets. Yeah,
I think there's a very, very good chance of that happening. I, however, don't live in the real world, and I have picked Charles Leclerc to win the Monaco Grand Prix. Because I really hope it happens. I think he's the only person other than a Red Bull to get a pole position this season. And I think the Ferrari in general has looked pretty decent. It's matched the Red Bull in qualifying. Now, whether Red Bull have been setting their cars up more for the race and they don't really mind if someone leapfrogs them, that's a very sort of valid point, and I have chosen to completely ignore that one in my prediction here.
That's also a very dangerous game to play at Monaco, though.
It is, and that's what I mean. I don't think that they do that at Monaco, so whether we'll see Red Bull come out with a lot more performance, we probably will, but I would love to see Charles Leclerc at the top, and I do think that there is a non-zero chance of it happening, so I've put Charles Leclerc to win, and then behind him in second place, I've put Fernando Alonso. Because I also do think Alonso himself has been hyping this one up as an opportunity for Aston here. I see him going all in on it, and in my head, there's a glorious battle between Leclerc and Alonso in qualifying, and Leclerc just pips him. And I think, to be honest, during the race, things will probably stay pretty similar. So I've put Fernando in second place just because I think, again, that car's got some good performance. I'd love him to win it, to be honest. Yeah, so I've gone for a non-Red Bull top 2. I feel like you probably haven't. I feel like you're being very realistic here.
I've got Max Verstappen, but that's not important.
Why have you done that, Josh?
Because he's dead good and in a dead good car. And it's well better than everyone else's car. No.
Yeah. I take
I'm
that
interested.
point.
I understand that I normally do the mad predictions.
Yeah.
I feel like I have gone quite conservative this week, partly because I've done them half an hour. I didn't want to look stupid. But I am interested, actually, on a serious note, that you think, because I'm sure we've spoke before, that you have said you think this season may be the season where a manufacturer wins every race.
Yeah.
And you're predicting that not to happen now. So what's changed? Is it more hope, or do you actually think there's a chance?
I feel like this is the first potential chance that someone other than Red Bull could win a race. I feel like because of the characteristics of Monaco, you could probably put someone in a road car, and they'd do you know what I mean? Like Ricciardo won it a good few years ago with like an engine issue, and he wasn't getting proper engine power, and he still won the race. People have won it with like dead tires and all that, because you really just can't overtake. Like the only way you can really is if you go for an insane move and it somehow works out, or if you undercut through strategy. So yeah, I just thought, like, do you know what? I've seen a Ferrari on pole before this year. And I know Leclerc is a bit of a demon around Monaco anyway, and he never seems to finish the race or do well. And I feel like there's a chance, hopefully, for him to do that this time. He's put it on pole, is it twice before at Monaco? And
probably
not started one of them, and then Ferrari did a Ferrari last year, and he ended up fourth. But yeah, I just think that this is genuinely the first chance. So although I'm kind of laughing and joking about it a little bit, and I think there's probably more likelihood that it'll be a Red Bull on the top, I thought, you know what? I'm going to go for it.
Go crazy.
Yeah. I have put Max Verstappen in third place because, and I've put Sergio Perez in fourth because I do think that the Red Bull will be up there. But I could just see the other two just potentially edging them out.
Just to dig into that really quick a bit more, do you think it'll be a poor qualifying, or do you think it'll be strategy based? Because you say there's no overtaking, so they're either qualifying poor for a Red Bull, which would be, I assume, third and fourth, or the poor strategy, which isn't usually like Red Bull. You normally get the strategy spot on.
Yeah.
So you're predicting a bit of a poor qualifying for Red Bull.
Yeah. I think they'll both be on it, and
I like it.
In my predictions, it's close. In my head, it's close, but yeah,
I like
got them in third and fourth. How about you? What's well? I'll tell you what. Well, while I've gone third and fourth, I'll chuck my fifth place fella in there as well. I've gone Carlos Sainz just because I think that the Ferrari's going to be pretty good around Monaco, and Sainz isn't as good as Leclerc. No. So that's my reasoning. What have you gone for outside of the top two? Who are your sort of exciting predictions? If it's not Yuki, I'm going to be very sad.
They're not overly exciting. I didn't really pull them out of a hat. So I've gone Alonso in third.
Nice.
I'll just burn through them and then talk a bit about it. I've got Alonso in third. I've put Leclerc in fourth, and I've put George Russell in fifth.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So right, I keep waiting for Mercedes to bring it.
I know. Yeah, I had this conundrum with my list,
and I always seem to put one of them. Weirdly, usually George Russell. I think if you go back and look at my predictions in it, and he never makes it. Well, he might have, but rarely where I put him in my predictions. Yeah. I don't know. I guess I would just like to see Mercedes back challenging, because although we've said it before, Red Bull fan, I would like to see Mercedes challenging that again, because it's good for the sport. It makes it more exciting. No one enjoys a one horse race for too long, and I know we've said it previously. Although they're not really showing signs of it yet, I still feel like Mercedes are the ones to challenge eventually. Yeah. When they get it right, I feel like Ferrari have always got the Ferrari. Aston Martin are doing like so well, but there's an argument that they're massively punching above their weight. And when Mercedes click into gear and get it right, I think they're the ones with the capability to be as close to Red Bull as to actually challenge. That might be me talking out my arse, but in my head it makes sense. And as we've said, with the new upgrade packages coming now to Monaco, maybe it'll just say click for Mercedes. That wouldn't be an ideal finish for them, but it would be a start.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I did exactly the same as you. I kind of feel like that I'm always expecting them to take that step, and they never seem to quite do it yet. But it's not a great track for Hamilton.
No,
It never seems to do particularly well at Monaco.
Yeah, and that is exactly why I chose Russell and not Hamilton.
Just feed that to you there. It's interesting just to kind of round out this section as well. Actually, it's interesting that you say about Aston sort of punching above their weight, which I think everyone has that kind of feeling of them at the moment.
Don't get me wrong, I love it.
Yeah. Oh no, it's amazing, and that's totally not a dig at them either. It's just insane to see a team sort of struggling with the start the previous season sort of last, and now they're second in the constructors. There was some interesting rumours going around, and I think the rumours have got a little stronger recently. Even today, I read one about Aston possibly partnering up with Honda from 2026. So I think that they're genuinely trying to negotiate a works engine, which is one big thing that stops a lot of teams. You know, I think you typically see works teams performing the best. So I think Lawrence Stroll is probably continuing on his rampage of trying to push Aston all the way up to be title challengers. And if they get their own engine supplier, because obviously Honda were with Red Bull, Honda decided to leave, and then Red Bull kind of took over the powertrain department, and it's now partnered with Ford, and it's Red Bull powertrains. And then Honda, as they seem to do in Formula One, just went, actually, no, we'd quite like to be involved in Formula One. So I believe the rumours are that they are potentially going to come back as an engine supplier now and partner up with Aston, which would be very exciting. So maybe Aston will keep punching, and maybe this will stay. But I feel like I definitely expect them to struggle more now. I feel like that they've suddenly taken this massive leap, and then they're trying to stay at that level. Whereas you've got the kind of the sleeping giant almost of like Mercedes and maybe even Ferrari, who it just feels like they haven't quite worked everything out yet. And once they do, they'll sort of shoot back up. Maybe they won't.
That's kind of what I was getting at though, because yeah, obviously you've got Red Bull being Red Bull, but take them out of the equation. It feels like Aston Martin have very much pounced on an opportunity, because as you've mentioned, the Mercedes aren't doing great. Ferrari aren't. There's a lot of teams that are massively underperforming, but you expect, and you fully expect them to get it right at some point, and they will get it right at some point. And it's when they do they just then leapfrog Aston, or does Aston sort of get involved in like a dogfight with them, or it just feels like they have the firepower and the capabilities at the moment to leap ahead once they click and get it right. But listen, like, you can only sort of beat what's in front of you, and Aston Martin are doing a splendid job at that at the minute. So this isn't like a dig or a slight at them whatsoever. There's an opportunity there, and they've seized it. You can't say any fairer than that.
And it's also possible that we're just kind of still kind of a little bit shocked by the leap that they've made. You know, maybe in a year's time, we're sitting here talking about Aston as genuine contenders, or a couple of years' time. I know that's definitely what they're hoping for. It's mad. It's the biggest performance gain I think I've seen for a team between seasons in a long time.
If they're going to be contenders, they need a better second driver. Anyway, moving on.
Sorry, Lance. Yeah. Well, to be fair, moving on. I think that's kind of a pod.
Yeah, it's everything we wanted to cover.
For a non sort of race weekend that wasn't a Formula One race but was a endurance race weekend, that was quite fun. As always, you know, we keep saying this, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, but thank you to everyone who has like got involved with us over on TikTok, on Instagram, watching the pod episodes on YouTube or listening to them. We really appreciate it. If you could help us out a little bit, go give us a follow and a like and a subscribe and a thumbs up and a whatever else you can possibly do. 5-star rating, all that sort of stuff. It'd really help us out. And yeah, that has been episode 15. We'll catch you next time.
Watcha.
Boom.